Hello, Prairie View students, family, staff, and guests. We're finishing up The Snow Treasure by Marie McSwiggan, Chapter 30. Yesterday, I was out on one of our buddy benches on our east side playground. I hope you're all enjoying the story. This will be the last chapter. Thank you for joining me these last month or so as I've read the book. Tomorrow, I will be starting a new book, and it won't just be for the 3rd through 6th graders. It will be a book for all of us. And it will be a book that I'll be reading for everyone. Chapter 30. Peter was dry and warm in Uncle Victor's cabin. The coast of Norway was somewhere out in the blackness. The Atlantic rolled and the Clang Pearson pitched, and Peter was jousted up and down with the wash of the waves. Ahead lay America. So Peter was going to America. He was going to see New York and go to Pittsburgh with Jan Lassick and then travel to Minnesota where his uncle was a professor at St. Olaf's College in Northfield. Uncle Victor could arrange it, he said. You have to admit, as a minor in my custody, our minister in Washington will do that much for us. He'll be only too glad to do something in return for all this gold. But what about Jan Lassick? Peter asked. How can he go without a passport? But he has a passport, the one that was stolen. There'll be a record of it in Washington, and they'll be grateful for the information about the one who is masquerading in his name. They won't be long finding him. Peter was overjoyed with this good news for Jan, since he had risked his life for him. There was no reward too high. Uncle Victor said something like this. It wasn't as easy for Jan as it looks, Peter. He ran a grave risk. He did it simply because I didn't feel right about sailing and leaving you there. Of course, he knew the routine of the camp. He knew that at supper hour the barracks would be deserted, except for the mess hall, and he knew about the side door and the sentry, and he was still in danger of being caught himself. If one thing had gone wrong, he would have been caught. He had his uniform too, Peter mused. One German uniform looks pretty much like another. Then a thought struck him. But how did he get the key to open the cell door? He wanted to know. The keys are kept on a panel in the guard room. The room was empty while the guard was at mess. All Jan had to do was slip in and take the key marked Das Gefängnis. His uncle went on. All that part is easy. The only hard part was getting him to the barracks without being seen on the way there. For he was being looked for everywhere. So we didn't dare have him go by foot from the Snake to the beach and barracks. It was Rolls who solved it for us, his uncle went on. He suggested that since the roads were being watched, we make a landing by water. The Clang was pretty well covered by camouflage, so we could be moved to the mouth of the Snake where it meets the big fjord. We were lucky it was a bad night. The rain and the mist shortens the day. When it got dark, Rolls and Hans Thorpe and Stan lowered the lifeboat and rowed him right up to the fishing pier. But they couldn't wait for him because it was too dangerous. They had to get back to the cover of the Clang. That's why you had to swim so far. But how did Land get past the sentries into the barracks? Just the way you got out. He waited for one to come up and turn and start back. The minute his back was turned, he stepped inside the door. It isn't bolted till taps, and Jan knew it. The sentry was there to guard that every door, but there are ways to get past sentries if you can think of those ways. Wasn't Jan afraid he'd get caught when he got inside the barracks? Of course, terribly. He had to risk it. He did it for me, for you, and because I take him to America if he got you out. We heard the soldiers marching in the hallway. Were they coming to get me? Whether they were or not, you and Jan would have been in pretty tight place if you'd run into them. Peter fell back in the bunk. So, I'm going to America. But what about Mother and Lovicia and Bunny? Peter, I know you think it's high-handed of me to be taking you this long distance without so much as asking if you want to go. But there was nothing else to do with you. I couldn't go all the way across the Atlantic Ocean without knowing what would become of you. And when I got you on board, there was nothing to do with you but take you along. You daren't turn back with all this gold. Oh, Uncle Victor, it isn't that. Only what? Well, when Father left, he said I was the man of the family and was to look after the others. Peter, don't worry about your mother's not being able to look out for herself and her children. And although I'm sorry to have to tell you this, your father may soon be home. The British have withdrawn their forces from much of the coast. Our army is putting up a magnificent defense, but it's only a question of time, and it can no longer hold out. Then the order will come to cease firing. Peter thought about the night his father had gone away, the night of the first blackout, and all of the things that had happened since. It's a shame, Peter, for you to have to leave without so much as saying goodbye to your family and Helga and Michael and Per Garson and the others. But your mother was glad I told her what we were going to try to do. You know, she had gone to the homes to warn them that the missing Nazi might be in their barn. When Lovicia got to the farm with the news of what happened to you, she strapped on her skis and took the back trail through the woods to the snake. Take him to America by all means, she said. I want him to grow up in a country where people are free. She asked to have you promise that you will always remember you come of liberty-loving people who think freedom is greater heritage than gold. There was a clatter of steps in the companionway. Rolls came into the cabin. Submarine off of the starboard board, he said. Uncle Victor jumped to his feet in alarm. Then he saw the sheepish grin on Rolls' faces. But it's a British sub, he spoke lamely. The Clang's doing 5 knots in the sea, he added. She ought to ride well, Uncle Victor answered. She's got a cargo of gold for ballast. The flag of Norway was draped above the map on the bulkhead. Into the cabin came the notes of a cornet. It's my old horn. I lent it to the Polish boy, Rolls explained. In the galley, Lon Yasek was practicing the Star-Spangled Banner. Hope you enjoyed the story. I sure did. Good ending.